Hello, this is Oliver with Everyday Finance. I'm going to be going over the main retirement accounts, being the 401k, the Roth IRA, and the traditional IRA. We're just kind of going to go through them, see what the pros and cons are, and where to put your money to make the most out of it. Just a few bookkeeping things before we begin. Laws and percentages can of course change depending on what state you're in. And it's always good to just double check that what you're doing is legal, and it will always make sure you make the most money. Any state accountant, fiduciary, or retirement professional will be able to kind of help you work through this and answer any questions that you have. You also are going to want to invest as much as you can into your retirement accounts, just because retirement is becoming a lot less common as people need more and more money to retire. Some people told around the amount that you need to retire nowadays is around $4 million. That sounds a little high personally, but you're still going to need a lot more money than you would if you were to have retired 30 years ago or whatever. But just make sure you don't overinvest to the point where you can't afford to live now. And also with these accounts, most of the time you can't take money out of them until you're old and retired without paying a fee. Generally it's going to be about 10% of the money that you take out is going to be the fee, but I highly suggest you just keep your money in your retirement accounts, and unless if you have to, just don't touch them and just leave them in there. The main principle, which is why these accounts are so well known, is because it prevents what I want to call double dipping by the government. These accounts are tax advantage, so you're only going to have to pay taxes once, or there's ways for these accounts to help alleviate some of the double dipping. What double dipping is pretty much if you were to get paid $50,000 by your employer for your salary, first you would have to pay an income tax on that, so the government would be taking some money out of there, and then once you invest it and start getting a return on your investment and generating revenue, they would also tax that as capital gains, so pretty much the money would be taxed twice, rather than if you were to put them in these accounts where they would only be taxed once, or there would be some way to help alleviate the second round of taxing on them. The first account that I want to go into is the 401k. This one has a higher contribution limit of $19,000. This is actually up $5,000 from last year, and if you're older than 50, you can put up to $25,000 in these accounts. The most important things about these accounts is that a lot of the time they're going to be employer matched, which means that they'll pay, if you pay a certain amount of your salary, let's just say 3% of it, into these accounts. If your employer does a 3% match on your 401k, they will also put 3% of your equivalent to 3% of your salary into that account. So only by paying 3% of $50,000, you're actually going to put 6% of $50,000 into one of these into the 401k, and it's pretty much just free money on the table. And I would highly suggest anyone who can take advantage of that offer to do so, because again, it is free money sitting on the table, and if you do that consistently, it will build up a lot over time. This 401k, putting money into it, counts as a tax deduction, and it will lower your taxable income, which will help with your marginal tax brackets. One day I'm going to make a video explaining them and how they work, just to give everyone a little bit more information on how income is actually taxed. Eligibility for this account is not affected by income, so you can put money into this account and open an account at any time. And lastly, distributions, which are pretty much when you take money out of the account when you retire, they're going to be taxed as ordinary income. So again, let's just say you take $50,000 out of the account, that's going to be taxed at that 22% marginal rate. The next account that I want to talk about is, again, a widely known one. It's going to be the traditional IRA. This one has a $6,000 limit, again up $5,500 from last year, and if you're older than 50, you can put up to $7,000 into this account. The main thing with this account is that it's going to have a larger investment selection, so you'll have more plan options, and you'll be able to put your money in different places when compared to a 401k, and this will give you a chance to have a higher rate of return and a better percentage than a 401k. This account is also tax deductible, but it's phased out at higher incomes, or sometimes if your spouse is covered by a workplace retirement account. So before you deduct any money with your taxes, just make sure that you can actually deduct it and that it's not illegal to do so. And these distributions, much like the 401k, are going to be taxed at normal income. The next account, which is gaining popularity for good reason, is going to be the Roth IRA. This, again, much like the traditional IRA, has a lower limit than the 401k of $6,000, and is going to be, you can put $7,000 if you're older than 50. This is also going to have that larger investment selection, so you'll be able to try and find plans with a higher percentage. The main con about this account, however, is that you cannot deduct your contribution from your taxable income. This means that if you get paid $50,000 and you want to deduct some of that, you can by putting it into this account, you are actually unable to deduct that. Unlike if you were to put it into a traditional IRA account, or if you were to put it into a 401k. But on the bright side, when you take distributions later when you retire, they are completely tax-free, which means that the amount that you have in your account is completely yours, unlike the 401k and the traditional IRA, which you'll have to factor in the tax that you're going to have to pay on those accounts. Another good thing about this account, which I would not recommend doing, but if you need to, it can be very helpful, is that contributions for this account can be withdrawn at any time. This means that let's say you were to put $5,000 into the account for 7 years. After those 7 years, you could take out up to $35,000 without paying any taxes or fees on that amount. However, you cannot take out any money that you would have made from putting in those original $35,000. And there are some other qualified distributions which allow you to take out the money early. This can count as education, so if you want to go back for your master's, or for some reason you have a large Roth IRA and you want to go for your bachelor's, you're able to do that. In some cases, you can even pay for your spouses, your son, daughter. I think even in some cases, your grandson, granddaughter, you'll be able to pay for their education. You're also to take, I think it's up to $10,000 out of the account for your first house, so that can help with the down payment or anything like that. And then some medical expenses, if they're not covered by your insurance and they're more than 7.5% of your adjusted gross income, you're also going to be able to take money out of this account. Again, I don't recommend doing that, but if you do need the money with a Roth IRA, you can take it out of that account. Just the thing to note is that the ability to contribute and open one of these accounts is phased out at higher incomes. So just know that. So just know if you're making like $3 million a year, you're probably not going to be able to open up a Roth IRA. So just before you invest, you can have both a 401k and make the maximum contribution to that. However, you can only put $6,000 between an IRA and a Roth IRA. So yes, you can have both accounts, but you can only put $6,000 between the both of them. So you could max out one and put nothing in the other, put $3,000 in each, just in case if you needed to. But just make sure you're not overgoing that $6,000 a limit in either of the IRAs per year if you have both of them open. So we're just going to go through what I think are going to be the best practices. The first thing is if your employer does not match, and if the deductions don't matter, you're going to want to put your money right into a Roth IRA. And generally, the deductions, the only time you would want to use a traditional IRA is if the money you're going to be taking out later is going to be taxed at a lower percentage than the money that you're putting in. So this is a very funny position that you have to be in. You generally have to be making between $40,000 to like $64,000. That'll be really the only time that the money that you're going to be putting in will be worth more as a tax deduction than not having taxes on it later. But past $74,000, you're no longer getting a tax deduction on traditional IRA, and then you can just put it into a Roth IRA. So in most cases, you can just put it right into a Roth IRA and not worry about it. But again, if you're between that like 40,000 to 74,000, I would just go over to a retirement professional, fiduciary, anything like that, and just say, hey, what's the best thing I can do? And they might end up just saying at the very end, just put into a Roth IRA anyways. However, if your employer does match the amount of money that you put into the account, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put as much money as you can into your 401k until you reach that percentage that they match. After that, you're generally going to want to put your money into a Roth IRA and max that out. Because you're getting a tax deduction on the 401k, putting in a traditional IRA doesn't really matter because you're already getting the tax deduction. And then after you max out your Roth IRA, you're going to want to invest as much as you can into your 401k again. So let's just say if you're making $50,000 a year and for some reason you can invest all of your money and your employer is matching up to 3%, then the first thing you're going to want to do is put $1,500 into that 401k, so it's like you're putting $3,000 in with only having to put in $1,500. Then you're going to want to put $6,000 into your Roth IRA, and then you're going to come back and max out your 401k. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions or any other helpful tips, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.